What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering, and there is some really bizarre documents coming out of Disney called Reimagine Tomorrow, in which they quite honestly make one of the best cases I've ever seen them make for you to never give them another dime. Now, I upload 5 to 6 videos a day here on this channel. I hope that you appreciate the hustle, and I hope that you've left a like on this video, a comment. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe. There's a red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. I need YouTube to know that you want to see my videos because it's the only way you will. Now, this was a scoop from a couple of days ago, and it's taken some time to kind of digest everything. This from Christopher F. Rufo, writer, filmmaker, saying, Scoop, the Walt Disney Corporation claims America was founded on systemic racism, encourages employees to complete, quote, white privilege checklist, and separates minorities into racially segregated affinity groups. I've obtained internal documentation that will shock you. According to a trove of whistleblower materials, Disney has launched a diversity and inclusion program. Isn't it funny how anything that comes after the words diversity and inclusion always seems to be exclusive and regressive? But anyway, called Reimagine Tomorrow, which includes training on systemic racism, white privilege, white fragility, white saviors, microaggressions, and more. Disney claims that America has a long history of systemic racism and phobias and tells employees they must, quote, take ownership of educating yourself about structural anti-black racism and not rely on your own black colleagues to educate you, which is emotionally taxing. While white employees are told to work through feelings of guilt and defensiveness to understand what's beneath them and what needs to be healed, they must listen with empathy to black colleagues and not question or debate black colleagues' lived experiences. This is from the same factory as the Coca-Cola stuff. It is the same grift as critical race theory. First of all, you should never feel guilty for who you are. You should never feel guilty for anything you've earned. I don't buy white privilege. It's an absolute joke. I was given nothing in my life. My parents worked hard. They stayed together. That's probably the best privilege I had, is that my family stayed together. I paid for every bit of education I have. I paid for, I had nothing handed to me. In fact, as a white male, you don't even qualify for the vast majority of, financial assistance that exists today. I'm not saying I'm oppressed, but I'm just saying that it wasn't easy just because of my skin color. And this is the absolute disgusting kind of just awful stuff that Disney's engaging in. By the way, still happy to thank the Chinese government, for helping them film Mulan. Reflect on the diversity of your personal and professional networks and how racial and other dimensions to your identity do or do not give you access to an advantage. Proximity to black people or being part of a marginalized group does not mean you cannot harbor bias. Acknowledge your emotional reactions in this process, the source of discomfort, and productive ways to address it. Examine and work through feelings of guilt, shame, and defensiveness to understand what is beneath them. See, this isn't a natural feeling. You shouldn't feel guilt or shame, whatever your skin color is, whatever your race is, whatever your immutable features are. It's just who you are. It's a physical manifestation of what you are, but it isn't who you are. This is straight out of the same kind of line of thinking that when an ideology becomes an identity for people, I'm so serious that you please understand. You need to stop giving Disney money, and when you do, you tell them that this is why. Disney continues to loathe the people that built this company with their hard-earned dollars. The idea that employees would be taught to feel some level of guilt is pathetic. Do not question or debate Black colleagues' lived experience. You're not allowed to question somebody. So because somebody's Black, that means that they are automatically telling the truth about everything. There isn't a single color on the planet that I know, a race that comes with truthfulness. I'm pretty sure that's something, that you decide, regardless of your skin color. Are you sure they meant it that way? It's not a race thing. Or I'm just playing devil's advocate. Instead, reserve judgment. Offer statements of validation if somebody shares their experience. So if somebody's overreacting and, to something, you're not allowed to check them and say, maybe this person isn't racist. Maybe this person didn't mean to offend you. Maybe they are having a bad day. Maybe this isn't a big deal. You're not allowed to do that. You're supposed to just let them go off, queen, apparently. And that's fine. Look, if you have friends, you're allowed to check them. I don't know why this is anybody's responsibility in the workplace, though. Avoid conflating Black experience with other communities of color. While other people of color are subject to bad things, there's a unique history. So they're at the top of the victimhood stack, is what Disney is saying. Disney tells employees they should reject equality or equal treatment and instead strive for equality or the equality of outcome. They must reflect on America's racist infrastructure and think carefully about whether or not their wealth is derived from racism. Are you freaking kidding me? By the way, if you work at Disney, I know I have a lot of Disney employees that watch me, email me, thequartering@gmail.com. I want to hear what you have to say, because this is absolute absurdity. Disney sponsored the creation of the 21-day Racial Equality and Social Justice Challenge and recommended it to their employees. The challenge begins with a lesson on systemic racism and tells participants that they have all been raised in a society that elevates white culture over others. Is that a fact? That's interesting. I don't agree with that. I think that, first of all, the idea of white culture is bizarre to me. But, white folks aren't allowed to have culture. Everyone else is, though. You see, Susan Hennessy at Department of Justice, this is both in a legitimate tyranny and a joke country. There is no other is the root from which a tyrant springs. This and no other is the root from which a tyrant springs. When he first appears, he is a protector. Famous quote from philosopher Plato. This is truly appalling stuff. Equality is a noble goal. Equal treatment and access to opportunities each help us perform our best within a shared set of parameters. But we really need to be striving for equity, not equality, where we focus on with a focus on equality of outcome, not the equality of experience. So the idea that everyone should have the exact same outcome regardless of how hard they work for it, right? Take some time to step back and reflect on the diversity and inclusion strategies you're presently pursuing. Well, I'm pursuing none of them. I'm pursuing taking care of myself, just like most people out there. It isn't my responsibility to fight the power. It's my responsibility to live a good life, a life that is not full of hate, a life that treats people as their equals. I'll take on that responsibility as equals, to not live, to not look down upon others based on, their immutable characteristics. I think that that's fine. It isn't my job to buy into your weirdo propaganda for a company that is paying their employees a minimum wage. This is sick. I don't really understand I don't know any other way. Look at this. White privilege. I'm never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. I can take a job with an affirmative action employer without having my coworkers on the job suspect that I got it because of my race. Well, how about this? Abolish affirmative action. It's hurtful. It's absurd. It leads to poor hiring practices and to the suspicion that you only got the job because of that. It's not your coworker's fault for assuming that when your company employs a tactic where they are hiring less qualified candidates simply to fill a quota, because that's what affirmative action does. It doesn't actually defeat racism. It doesn't actually lead to changing any minds. It just leads to filling boxes and hiring not the best person in some cases for the job. Sure, there are cases where you might have two very equal candidates, but that's in a vacuum, right? If you have a let's say a low skill job, putting a box in another box, you could make an argument that two candidates would be pretty similar. But if you have a job that might require critical thinking and other types of skills, if you think you have two exactly the same candidates, then you haven't asked them enough questions. In fact, even if it's a low skill job, if you think both candidates are exactly the same, and so we'll just pick a non-white employee to make sure we fill a quota, you probably haven't asked the right questions, asked enough questions. Now, it's entirely possible that the non-white employee is the better pick, but you can't blame the specter of doubt on other people because your company partakes in ridiculous programs like that. This is absolute absurdity. Look at this. I have never been told to burn in HE double toothpicks for my orientation. I have never been catcalled. I don't rely on public transportation. My parents pay all my rent and bills. A lot of these, by the way, have nothing to do with skin color, but everything to do with wealth. Your income status is definitely a stronger indicator of your likelihood to succeed in this country. That I would argue probably has more to do with it. Class probably has a lot to do with it. 75 things white people can do for racial justice. Are you joking? Stop. Stop giving Disney money. This is disgusting. This grotesque wokeness is as sad as Dumbo when separated from their birthing parent, or Bambi when the deer uterus haver was ended. Stop. Stop giving Disney your money. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.